Hi. Once again, I want to go over Matthew Crawford's shop classes Soulcraft in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to try making some videos that go over it a piece at a time. As we said, it's important to preview, to note what subheadings are, and as you may be able to notice visually, Matthew Crawford does his subheadings in the manner that one would expect in a magazine. Which is to say that the first letter is going to be in bold. And if you are reviewing the essay in Word, you'll note that I've used the styles pane so that this should show up, at least in your view, as a subheading. Okay, so again, it's called Shop Classes Soulcraft, and we'd want to ask ourselves, okay, what is shop class? Why is he talking about that? And we learned through the essay. Shop class is a class that was offered in high schools, just all the high schools everywhere. There was metal shop, there was wood shop, and these days there might be classes in electronics. For quite a long time there have been classes, machine shop type thing, car repair, that sort of thing. But a lot of those programs were lost more recently, when there's been a greater emphasis from No Child Left Behind, Common Core, and even before that, a greater emphasis on making students knowledge producers, which is to say that anybody who's going through high school should be preparing for college and should do so by taking classes that demand high performance in abstract ideas and theories. Okay, so we talked about this paragraph, the first paragraph of the introduction is talking about something very, very specific. So this is a specific to general introduction. And the specific thing is that a dealer in Richmond, Virginia, named Noel Dempsey, has been selling metal lathes, milling machines, and table saws. And he's acquired them from high schools that no longer have shop class. So that's why this has become a bit of a recycling industry, if you will. That those classes are gone, and so the equipment is gone, and they're being sold off from the schools, and they can be obtained on eBay. Okay, which suggests that all the machines were still good, but we're not teaching the classes in the high schools anymore. And the second paragraph does the work of, let's see, it makes this claim. At the same time, an engineering culture has developed in recent years in which the object is to hide the works. Rendering artifacts we use an unintelligible direct inspection. And he makes the claim about cars is the first example. Fasteners is the second example. Appliances with strange-looking fasteners that we can't take apart, so we can't inspect the inside. And his third example is the Sears catalog with the blown-up parts diagrams. And he says, you know, that those would be demanded by the consumer. So what we're to understand from this is that once upon a time, cars and regular appliances like toasters and radios and so forth were available to the consumer to be able to open and repair if they wanted to. And the Sears catalog was directing itself toward the sort of consumer that would demand, and that would really, Sears is kind of for everybody, that the consumer would demand to be able to see what the parts are, all right? And that is sort of true. We once upon a time had a consumer that was far more interested in what something was made of, how the parts fit together, because that would tell us something about how long it would last, as opposed to what we have now, a society of what is called, quote-unquote, planned obsolescence, meaning that things are made to fall apart, meaning that things are made so that we're done with them in 3 months or 6 months or 2 years, we throw them away, and we buy something new. And sometimes, you know, we don't even just throw something away because there's something wrong with it or it's fallen apart. Sometimes we throw something away because it's gone out of style or because we just want something brand new. So we've been very well trained as consumers to spend our money on new things and not place value on things that we bought last week. Okay. His third paragraph talks about a decline in tool use. And he makes this claim that it changes our mode of inhabiting the world. And what would that mean? If we think of ourselves as users of tools, then we think of ourselves as repairers, as makers of things. People, when I was very young, used to patch the holes in their jeans so that they would last longer. That was how things were done when I was in grammar school. However, by the time I reached high school, no, actually a little after, eventually people were buying jeans with holes in them, so they weren't even going to the effort of making their own holes. And that's a real shift in culture, a real shift in the way that we understand ourselves, a real shift in the way that we think about who we are in the world. That we have become more passive because we can't even make our own holes, much less patch ones that we have made. And it also makes us kind of completely dependent on the world of manufacturing, because we do not know what makes something go together or makes something work. We cannot ourselves go and look for the sources, for the resources that make them. We cannot ourselves make our own things. So we are completely dependent on what comes out of the cheapest factory in the world that will sell things to us at a dollar store. It says, and indeed there are fewer occasions for the kind of spiritedness that is called forth when we take things in hand for ourselves. That is to say, people might take a certain pleasure in their manual competence if they can fix their own jeans, darn their own socks, repair their own television set, as people once upon a time would do. But that is no longer a source of pleasure for people. Okay, what people once made, they buy. What they once fixed themselves, they replace entirely or hire an expert to repair. So what he's talking about is a way in which we have learned to be passive as consumers because the type of manufacturing has shifted from something that is apparent to us and ready for us to examine, evaluate, repair, change, to not knowing anything at all about what is inside of our cars or what is inside of our iPhones or desktops, not having the slightest idea what the parts are or how to repair them, which makes us dependent on somebody else to provide our things for us, which changes how we understand ourselves in the world. We've become users instead of makers. And so he's saying perhaps the time is ripe for a consideration of an ideal that has fallen out of favor, which is manual competence. Okay, that is to say, we don't necessarily think that it's great for kids to learn how to make a birdhouse, how to make a planter, and so forth. And indeed, there's a risk of scorn for those who do become that way. Okay, let's move along. So judging from his survey, articles began to appear in the vocational education. So vocational education, that would be a kind of a training school where you might go to a vocational high school instead of a college prep high school, a high school in which you would learn how, perhaps, to lay brick, how to build a cabinet, how to wire a home. And anyway, so 1985, there were titles such as The Soaring Technology Revolution and Preparing Kids for High-Tech and Global Future, which is to say that the shift went from repairing things by hand to, mechanical things, to a focus really on technology, digital technology specifically, computer technology is what was being thought about in 1985, IT systems. Of course, there's nothing new about American futurism, and no, there's not. Science fiction about traveling to other planets starts to become fairly popular in the 1930s, and you can go way back in the Wayback Machine and find American optimists who look forward to a future that would be without the problems that we have in the present. What is new to the wedding of futurism and what might be called virtualism, and what is he talking about here? Well, we have an understanding of what virtual reality is and virtual games, role-playing, not being present face-to-face and physically, but being distant and electronic or digital. The future in which we somehow take leave of material reality and glide about in a pure information economy. So yes, the idea that we don't have to do things anymore, we just need to move about information in a kind of ghostly way, as he has said. For 50 years now, we've been assured that we are headed for a post-industrial economy, which I think he's trying to be funny here, and he is being funny here because it's still industry that gives us our iPhones. It's still industry that gives us our cars. What the post part about it is that those things aren't being made in the United States any longer. More than 10 billion manufacturing jobs have left our shores in the last few decades. So, no, we're not post-industrial in our economy. We're just post-industrial in knowing how to make things. Manufacturing jobs have certainly left our shores to a disturbing degree, but he says the manual trades have not. And he's making the point here that when if people want to become competent in the manual trades, well, obviously we still have them right here. We still have to build houses here. The Chinese cannot do it for us. We still have to repair machines here. We're not going to send them to China as of yet to do it. We're not going to send our cars to China to do it. And he makes the point, and this is true, we do have labor shortages in the United States. We have them in construction and auto repair. We also have them in a lot of the medical fields, not all of them. But we have labor shortages here. We have the case that Americans are not planning for careers in this area, in these areas. And he questions the idea that we should lump together trades and manufacturing. And his problem is that we have lumped together the use of the hands with blue collar, which we kind of always used to mean, blue collar always used to mean the makers, the people who use their hands, and that was not in particular a low-income job. Many members of the middle class were blue collar. Factory jobs used to pay quite well and recognize the skill of the laborer in the making. So yes, the pundit class, that is to say the people who tell us what to think, if you like, the pundits, people who shape ideas, have told us that that's blue collar, and their requiem is intoned. Of course, requiem meaning a song for the dead. So that blue collar is dead. And this is behind the idea that Americans are supposed to be trained to be thinkers, not doers. Wall Street recently wondered whether skilled manual labor is becoming one of the sure paths to a good living recently. This was brought to light in the bestseller The Millionaire Next Door, which revealed that the typical millionaire is the guy driving a pickup with his own business in the trades. I don't think all plumbers are millionaires, but plumbers certainly make quite a good living if they're doing it right. So yes, that manual labor can certainly be a path to a good living if the head understands what the hands are doing. Manual labor that is done by the person who is making decisions for himself about how to do the repairs. But when it's manual labor, McDonald's style, where somebody else is telling you how to do everything and you do not need to think about it, well, that is not a path to a good living. My real concern here is not with the economics of manual work. He's saying that he's not concerned with the economics of skilled manual work. Well, maybe not primarily so, but he wouldn't bring this up if he didn't think it was an important point. But rather with its intrinsic satisfactions, which is to say, I mean these economic rumors, I mention these economic rumors only to raise a suspicion against the widespread prejudice, and he's right, there is a prejudice against manual labor, that such work is somehow not viable as a livelihood. That is to say, you end up in life wherever it was you began at high school level, you're not learning more things, you're not making more money, you're not increasing in your value for your company or anybody else's company. But you're just staying exactly where you were, and that makes it not viable if your income is not increasing. Okay, so I'm going to stop this video right here, and I'll move on.